next speaker is our great friend Tony Snesko. Tony will share his experience of living in the East Coast, the West Coast, and of course, his favorite place to live now in Idaho. Everybody knows Tony from his grassroots organizational efforts, his proud support of the Second Amendment, and of course you can catch him at IdahoOpenCarry.org. Big round of applause here at 580 KIDO for our great friend Tony Snesko.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Well, on Friday, I handed my presentation to my precious wife, had her read it to approve it, because she edits everything, and she said, throw it away. She said, that's national issues. You need to stay local. Well, and then last night I met with Ryan Jenks, told him about the Obama triple play that I was going to talk about, and he said, no, Tony, you need to talk about it at least a little bit. So, my precious, I'm sorry. I'm going to just tell you about, well, not many of you know about Obama's triple play, because it's never been referred to as that, but that's what I'm naming it. How many have heard of Organizing for Action, the Presidential Commission on Election Administration, and the Navigator jobs? Yeah. Listen to this. This is going, you thought maybe 2014 was going to be easy for us. It's not. Organization for Action is selling access to the White House for $500,000. Their stated mission is to influence policy debates, and their primary focus will be gun control and targeting the pro-gun politicians in 2014. That's what he's going to be doing with millions of dollars in 2014. The fun part here, the Presidential Commission of Election Administration was created by executive order, and critics say that it is an attempt to nationalize the country's elections for partisan advantage. It is the states, not the federal government, who traditionally have responsibility for elections. Obama will appoint 9 members to this commission, who will be chosen from among those with knowledge and experience in the administration of state and local elections, as well as representatives of successful customer service-oriented businesses, now listen, and any other individuals with knowledge and experience determined by the president to be of value to the commission. In other words, community activists and acorn. The Obama Navigator jobs. He is going to be paying $20 to $48 an hour to Acorn, Planned Parenthood, union workers, to explain the Obamacare program. On page 59 of that Navigator manual, after they get all of the questions answered, they're going to say, would you like to register to vote? So here, you've got 2 of these, where they're going to be going after more Democrats to register. They're going to go into every state to determine what is right and what's wrong with the elections. Now, that's what I was going to talk about, and I'm going to not go any further on that. But you need to watch the triple play, because he's coming after us. Obama is going to do it stealthily. You need to watch absolutely every one of his executive orders that are coming out, because that's how he's going to do it. Now, I was going to ask everyone for their opinion, but because we're on the air, I'm not going to do that. What your opinion is of the symbol of freedom. Well, let me tell you what I think our symbol of freedom is. At 4:30 in the morning on April 19th, in 1775, 38 men went across to the Lexington Common and lined up, waiting for the British. Standing in the center of the formation was old man Jonas Parker. He took off his hat and put it between his feet. He put flint and his musket balls in his hat, and he said, I'm not running from the British. Immediately thereafter, 700 British soldiers came around the bend, double quick march, got with 16 yards of them stopped, and the officer said, surround them, and disarm these rebels. Well, Captain Parker told his men to disperse. He didn't want their arms taken. Well, they dispersed, except for old man Jonas Clark. Somebody fired a shot, and then the British started firing on them. Old man Jonas Clark was the first one to go down. He fell to the ground, picked up his rifle, fired it. Then as he was reaching for his hat to get the musket ball and the flint, a bayonet went through his chest. A few minutes later, when the firing stopped, the British formed up, shot a volley into the air, and then gave 3 cheers and marched off to Concord to take the militia's arms. Just a few minutes later, Captain Parker put all of his men together. They tended to the wounds. He lined them all up, and they marched off to Concord with a drummer and fifer at the front. And they went back to re-engage with the British. My symbol of freedom is the Minuteman. The man standing there with his musket in his hand, with his chin in the air, and being watchful for what's coming around the corner. We need to be Minutemen. Excuse me, I need a second. My fervency about the Second Amendment comes from living in California for 28 years. And in Washington, D.C. for 36 years. 2 of the most oppressive places to own and carry a gun. Every man and woman deserves to be free. Not Washington, D.C. free, not California free, not even Idaho kept free. We need to be 1775 free. When those Minutemen had the British retreating down that 16-mile road back to Boston, they were elated. They were overwhelmed with joy because they were for the first time experiencing true freedom. And the desire for authentic freedom is why our patriots fought and died during that war. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I met with, by accident, just came across him, the McCall police chief. And I introduced myself as being the founder of Idaho Carry, Open and Conceal. He said, well, you know, I've got a fellow up in McCall who's always open carrying. And I'm going up to him constantly saying, you know, you need to get your CC license. Because people call me and they tell me that you're carrying a gun, then I have to come out there and interview them. And interview you. And my jaw is just going slack. I mean, if they were pushing a wheelbarrow and somebody called in and said they're pushing a wheelbarrow, why in the world would you go out and check this guy out for carrying a gun, which is absolutely totally legal? Well, I didn't get in his face because he was sitting with a bunch of friends. And my goal always is not to embarrass a police officer, but to educate, not to alienate. For the most part, Idaho is gun friendly, but too many of the police, too many of the sheriffs do not know what the case law is. There's a Supreme Court case law that gives them the right to carry a gun and not to be interfered with by the police. There are a few people, only a few people, who carry their gun in McCall because they're intimidated because of this police chief. We are going to go to McCall. We are going to set up our booth in McCall. And we are going to get every possible person that we can to start open carry in McCall and teach the sheriff something. Now, he ignited a bit of a fire in me, enough of a fire that I went and last week ordered 5,000 cards. You know, you will recognize this is my normal business card. On the inside now, I have all of the case law that you and your friends will hand to law enforcement officers if ever you see one, whether or not they're stopping you. You need to give this to them and say, here, you need to read this, keep this. I've got 5,000 of these. So what this says inside the card is, law enforcement officers cannot detain someone without reasonable suspicion of a crime. Law enforcement officers must have reasonable suspicion of a crime before demanding ID. The presence of a firearm, where legal to possess, cannot in itself be reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. And in Terry versus Idaho, 3 criteria must be met in order to disarm an individual. The officer must have suspicion that the individual is armed, that he is dangerous, or that he has committed or is about to commit a crime. It says on the bottom, be respectful when you hand this to the police officer. When the police officer approaches you, turn on your recorder. And if you've got a video, it's legal to do that here. You only need one person's consent. So video and record any confrontation with a police officer and talk to him like you were talking to your mom. Be extremely polite. Take this card out and say, here's a gift. And let him read this. And then ask for his supervisor. And then ask his supervisor to read it. Because we are going to stop harassment by the police and by the sheriffs to anyone who is open carry. Now, until recent action by our legislature, and thank God for the legislation they did pass, because cities had the right to restrict concealed carry. But our legislature this last year changed that. And no longer can cities inflict any type of restriction on us. So, Idaho Carry's motto, now here we go. Idaho Carry's motto is, open carry is the bold, beautiful face of the Second Amendment. When you open carry, you are boldly proclaiming the Second Amendment. It is time to be courageous. It is time to move out from the ranks of the spectator, become participants in the defense of our Second Amendment. The Second Amendment needs you to become the beautiful, bold face of Idaho for the Second Amendment if we're going to preserve our right to carry here. A right neglected will be a right taken from us. They did it in California, and they do it in other states. Now, does the thought of open carrying make you a little bit nervous or uncomfortable or fearful? No. Well, it does to some. But let me read this to you. Anthropologist Charles Springwood defined it well when he said that open carriers are trying to naturalize the presence of guns, which means that guns become ordinary, omnipresent, and expected. Over time, the gun becomes a symbol of ordinary personhood. That's what we want it to be. We don't want it. My brother lives in Arizona. He said, I don't have a gun yet, but I'm going to buy one. And he said, nobody down here, no one at all is in the least bit surprised when somebody carries a gun, because everybody's carrying a gun on their hip in Arizona. It has become a natural part of their society. We need it to become a natural part of our society. That fellow walking around up in McCall as the lone wolf with an open carry needs all of his gun-friendly, gun-carrying compatriots to join him out on the road and give too many people for this police chief to interview. Some of you say that you conceal carry because you like the surprise element when you're confronted by a bad guy. Not me. I don't want to try to outdraw a bad guy who's got a gun. You become a deterrent to crime and criminals when you open carry. Concealed carry deters nothing. Now I'm going to read you the statement from this young criminal. This young man who was talking about his, and this was a felon who they were talking to, was talking about his felon brother. Said when he saw a person open carrying at a place he was going to rob, and said this about his response. My brother said it took him almost a week to get the picture of a guy with a gun out of his mind before he could get up the nerve to rob another store. It really freaked him out because it reminded him that there were people out there with guns that could shoot back. Criminals will avoid confrontation, and they carefully search for easy targets. They will not choose your location if they see you open carrying. My goal is not to be a victim, but to allow the criminal the opportunity to make an informed decision, which means that I am less likely to have to draw my gun when I open carry than someone who's carrying concealed. Now, I don't want to shoot anyone. I mean, if you shoot anyone, you're definitely going to spend at least $100,000. At least $100,000 in attorney's fees defending yourself. Because in every shooting, there's a civil lawsuit. So I don't want to shoot anyone. For that reason, mainly. And even if it's a bad guy, only if I'm going to die. But open carrying increased my odds that I won't be shot, that I won't be robbed, that no one is going to pull a gun on me. Now, by making it clearly obvious that I am armed, that I have teeth, the bad guy's risk assessment immediately tells him that his life is in jeopardy. And he leaves me and everyone else around me alone. Hyenas don't attack the lions trying to take gazelles away from them, because it's all about self-preservation. And that's the way every criminal thinks. They're cowards. They won't go to a place where they think they're going to be shot. Let me ask you this. If you're out with your wife or your child or true love, and you want to deter the criminal looking to rob you, or do you want to get into a gunfight with your loved one standing next to you? No. If you're carrying a gun openly, you're protecting your family. They are less likely to be attacked. Well, I tell you, I want to jump on the back of what Greg was just talking about. I just started last month with the assistance of Scott. Scott, I see you in the back. Scott, I forgot your last name? Meyer. Okay. I want to introduce Scott, and okay, that's it. All right. He created our website, Second Amendment 2014, and in that we will have listed all of our elected officials, all of our city councilmen, all of our school board, all of our sheriffs. You need to go to Second Amendment 2014, and we'll have that for you. Thank you very much.